Multiple Republican presidential candidates are praising recent rulings from the Supreme Court. During a rally in South Carolina over the weekend, former President Trump touted his nomination of 3 justices to the high court during his administration. He praised the conservative justices' decisions to strike down President Biden's student debt relief plan, as well as to severely limit affirmative action. CBS News political contributor and deputy politics editor for campaigns at The Washington Post, Sean Sullivan, joins us now. Sean, thank you very much for joining us today.
Good to be with you.
So these recent decisions from the Supreme Court, they are getting a lot of attention. How are Trump's rivals in the race? How are they framing them?
Well, when you look at the way the entire Republican field is responding to both the affirmative action decision and the student loan decision, you're seeing pretty broadly across the board agreement that, in their view, this was the right decision. You've seen praise from Trump, as you noted, but also from others like Mike Pence, Tim Scott, others across the spectrum of candidates in the Republican primary right now. And in fact, we saw Pence, in a statement that he put out, do something similar to what former President Trump did and sort of try to take credit for this decision and say, hey, look, I played a role in appointing these 3 justices who were key to these decisions, trying to remind voters, hey, I played a part in that. So, there are things that have stoked some disagreement right now in this Republican field, but I think across the board right now, you're seeing Republicans kind of rally behind this. Now, obviously, on the other side, you've seen strong criticism from Democrats, strong criticism from President Biden. And that opens up a pretty big question going into the next election of what is the political implication of these rulings going to be? Is this going to galvanize, potentially, as some Democrats hope, Democratic voters to get out and vote and say, we disagree with these decisions. Now, the student loan relief that we thought we were going to get, we're not going to be able to get that anymore. The affirmative action decision that we disagree with, does that galvanize Democratic voters? Or do you have an effect on the other side? Do you have conservative voters saying, hey, this is an example of the party sort of following through on appointing justices that effectively fulfilled a lot of the demands that they have long presented and had. And so I think that's something we definitely want to watch going into the next election as one of the themes potentially in terms of how people decide who to vote for.
Sure, it's a lasting legacy we are still seeing play out right now. Shifting gears, though, the Washington Post reported that Trump tried to pressure then Arizona Governor Doug Ducey after the 2020 election to overturn the results in that state. I want to talk to you about that, but here let's first take a listen at what former Vice President Mike Pence had to say about that on Face the Nation.
I did check in with not only Governor Ducey, but other governors in states that were going through the legal process of reviewing their election results, but there was no pressure involved.
So what do you make of Pence's response here?
Well, one, I would encourage folks to read the Post report from my colleagues, which is pretty revelatory and also just sort of shows, how broad and far-reaching the effort was by, at the time, then President Donald Trump, to try to overturn the election results. We've already seen previous reporting on the fact that he tried to pressure Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia, another state that he lost. And so this gives you a sense of the scope of that. It's interesting when you look at this race right now, when Mike Pence launched his campaign, one of the sort of defining issues, at least in the speech that he gave when he launched the campaign, was, pointing out his resistance to former President Trump's efforts to overturn the election, his disagreement with him that, he had a role that he could play in Congress that would allow him to do this. I think this is a reminder of the, difference between the two candidates, putting aside how they respond to each individual case. And if they do appear on a debate stage at some point, hearing from them about these specific instances, how they responded, how they interacted, could be a pretty extraordinary moment in this campaign where you have a former president and you have his vice president running against each other for the nomination, pretty openly disagreeing about this stuff. So I think there's going to be more to say and more to be heard from these two candidates in particular down the road.
And we know you will be watching it all. Sean Sullivan, thank you very much.
Thanks so much.